Hi there, and welcome to this new topic area, which is called metaphors. Now, I assume most of you have come across metaphors in English, in poetry. Essentially, metaphors, or the section metaphors, is the use of figures of speech. Now, like everything else in the academic literacy section, this will be tested through actual figures of speech that you will find in a passage. And the academic literacy section is testing whether you can understand what these figures of speech are. And very simply, when we're talking about metaphors specifically, they are ways to express complex ideas in a more familiar and vivid way. So, for example, an airplane is an airplane. It's a very literal way of expressing what this thing that carries people into the sky and flies around is. A bus in the sky could be a more metaphorical way of describing an airplane. It gives us an actual image. It gives us something to relate our understanding to. And so very simply, in this AR section, they're going to test your understanding of metaphors. What we're going to do immediately is take a look at a few examples and strategies of how to handle these kind of questions. Okay, so our very first question is an extract, and it says, "The workplace has become a battlefield where every meeting is a duel and colleagues sometimes turn into adversaries." In this extract, what does the metaphor battlefield suggest about the workplace? So, very simply, when we're looking at a metaphor, the first thing I would go to do is sort of underline this word and kind of figure out, when you think of battlefield, what are the words that you're thinking of? And I'd kind of put it into simpler terms. So, war, violence. You're thinking maybe aggression. You're thinking conflict. And then I'd go and have a look at what the possible answers are. So, A, is the workplace has become a battlefield? Does this suggest that this place is full of peace and teamwork? And if we look at the words that we've associated with that, we've kind of broken it down, put it into simpler terms. Absolutely not, right? So immediately we can scratch A. B, it's chaotic and full of conflict. As you can see already, when we talked about battlefield, we already kind of put in the word conflict, so this is a possible solution. It is large and open. Are battlefields large and open? Some of them, but that's not the defining qualities of a battlefield. So automatically I would kind of go, that doesn't really fit. It is strategically important. Strategic is a word that could be associated with battles, but is a battlefield strategically important? Well, maybe it may not be. And so as you can see, it's not a very good fit, even if some of these words can be associated with battlefields. So after kind of looking and eliminating the answers, it's kind of clear that B is the best fit. It's chaotic and full of conflict. So this idea is that this workplace has become a battlefield, and they're using the word battlefield to suggest that it is chaotic, it is full of conflict. So immediately, one of the ways I would try to sort of approach questions when they're asking you about a metaphor is immediately go into the word that they're asking about or the metaphor and think about what you associate it with. And then go back and read it in context and see how it may actually fit in. So, yeah, I would think obviously about associations, and I would think quite a lot about going back to the context. Okay, so our next question is, in the rapidly evolving tech industry, startups often find themselves swimming against the tide, striving to innovate while facing giant incumbents. In this extract, swimming against the tide suggests that startups. So I'm going to go back to what I suggested earlier. So we're obviously looking at swimming against the tide. Now, immediately, without any context at all, what other things I associate with swimming against the tide? I associate struggle. If you're swimming against the tide, something that is difficult, tiring, challenging. Those are the kind of words that I'm associating with it immediately. And that's kind of my starting point. And then I'm going to go and look at the potential possible answers and then give the sentence a read again. So in this extract, swimming against the tide suggests that startups follow the established path set by larger companies. Well, if you're swimming against the tide could be, usually people would swim sort of with the tide, right? So the tide is sort of the prevailing path or the way things do. So following the established path set by larger companies, if you're swimming against the tide, that would genuinely not really fit. So automatically I'd know that A is not that. Face significant challenges and opposition. Is swimming against the tide, is it facing significant challenges and opposition? And automatically I kind of go into my words. Does this resonate with struggle, with difficulty, with something that's challenging? And automatically I realize that this could be a potential answer. Easily outmaneuver larger competitors. I'm going to go back to my sentence and actually read it again. In the rapidly evolving tech industry, startups often find themselves swimming against the tide, striving to innovate while facing giant incumbents. So we can see there is really a clue about other competitors, but there's no notion that there's this desire to outmaneuver larger companies. If we look at the context of the sentence, it's basically saying that startups try hard and are sort of trying very hard to challenge themselves to innovate, and it's pretty challenging. So automatically I kind of eliminate this. Okay, and then cooperate closely with industry leaders. Now I probably would not find that very suitable, because as it says, what we're talking about is while facing giant incumbents, facing other companies. So there's no real cooperation. It's more like we're in opposition to other companies, or we're competing with other companies, which is the opposite of cooperation. So I'd be able to strike that, and I would realize that this is the most suitable answer. Let's move on to our final question. The digital revolution has turned the media landscape into a wild west, where new players can make a name for themselves amidst the chaos. In this extract, describing the media landscape as a wild west suggests that. Okay, so I'm going to go straight to wild west. What do I think of when I think of the wild west? I would think of no laws. I would think of people doing what they want. I may think of sort of no rules, maybe something that's a little violent. Okay, so I've got an idea of what I think Wild West may be. Let me read the sentence again. The digital revolution has turned the media landscape into a Wild West, where new players can make a name for themselves amid the chaos. In this extract, describing the media landscape as a Wild West suggests that it is highly regulated and structured. Well, no. Automatically, I've already looked at it and been like, Wild West is something where there's no laws, where people are doing what they want. So this idea that it's regulated or structured is not really in keeping with the Wild West. And if I had no idea what the Wild West, if I had no connotations of what the Wild West is or was, I would very much look at other words, other clues in here that could give me an idea. And I think one of the context clues is sort of chaos. Make a name for themselves amid the chaos. It's talking about something that's chaotic already. So even if I don't know, even if I have no associations with the World Wide West, I would realize that A does not fit anything because it's highly regulated and structured. It does not fit in with chaos. Open and unregulated with opportunities and risks. Well, that could be correct. If you think about the Wild West, there's no rules, there's no laws, people are doing what they want, it's open, it's unregulated, and they talk about opportunities and risks, and very much the second half of the sentence, where new players can make a name for themselves amid the chaos. It talks, they can make a name for themselves, suggesting that there's opportunity, suggesting that while there's risks, while there's chaos, there's also opportunity. So I might put a little dot there saying, this may be suitable. And then C, only accessible to established companies. The Wild West, if you think about your associations of the Wild West, where there are no rules, people are doing what they want, you can tell immediately that this does not fit. And then we have D, chaotic but full of potential for newcomers. So we've already talked about how the Wild West, they say there's chaos. We've talked about how the Wild West may denote chaos, so it's a yes for this one. Full of potential for newcomers, where new players can make a name for themselves amid the chaos. So it's talking about chaos, but it's also talking about the potential. So yes, absolutely. So now we're sitting with two answers, both which seem correct. One, open and unregulated with opportunities and risks, and the second, chaotic but full of potential for newcomers. How do we discern which of the answers is correct? And I would say if you're faced with this situation, what you're going to do is try and find the most correct answer. And the way you're going to do this is by actually going to read back the extract. So while it says the digital revolution has turned the media landscape into a Wild West, right? So something that is unregulated, new players can make a name for themselves. So there's potential amid the chaos. So right, we're basically left with kind of three things: the Wild West, the potential, and the chaos. And if we look at B, this idea that it's open and unregulated, this idea of the Wild West is absolutely there. Opportunities and risks is there. But the one thing that's kind of missing from this answer is this notion of chaos. And let's see whether D has that for us. And when we look at D, we look at, it mentions chaotic, but full of potential for newcomers. So this word chaotic very much denotes unregulated, open, and full of potential for newcomers. And so I would say D is the more correct answer. So this is an important thing in the metaphor section. You are looking for the most correct answer. The answer that sort of encompasses the most amount of things that could be true about the metaphor and about the sentence.